Hello folks, hope you're doing well. So, welcome to another One Piece review. This time we're covering manga chapter 1145. And man oh man, I really enjoyed this chapter. Not just the ending, but everything that Oda laid out from the colour spread to the cover page. Yes, we got a colour spread and the cover page. All the way up to that final panel of Gunko staring down Team Nami. That was epic. I'll get to that. But let's start off with the colour spread, and obviously Oda dedicating this colour spread to the return of the anime, with the return of the 2 episodes this weekend. So it looks like the Straw Hats, all of them, are in the studio watching Gear 5th Luffy. I love how Luffy is like, got this look like, look mom, I'm on TV. Oh wait, never mind. You got all the Straw Hats looking on, getting hyped up. You know this is like dedicated to the anime, because even Sanji's paying no attention to Nami right next to him. Nami's enamored with Luffy. I mean, you can make that with what you will. Speaking of enamored, I can't help but notice, and I don't blame Zoro for this, Zoro's not looking at the screen at all. The way he's got his head to the angle, it looks like he's checking out Rob in Loki. And I don't blame him, because that for me, that's pretty much cinema. But Oda really outdid himself with this colour spread, and I love how he used the art of the Straw Hats from the anime for this colour spread. Like, you really see it in full throttle, and it was a great choice from Oda to use the Gear 5th Luffy, because there's going to be a lot of that coming in part 2 within the anime. Spoiler alert. But then we actually get a Yamato cover story, which I did not expect. I expected to have the colour spread and that was it. But shout out to Oda for this, because this highlighted what I said was probably going to lead towards Yamato and Ulti in page 1 and a resolution between the 3. So you literally have Yamato like a boss, not even looking back, as Ulti is now free from the dartboard. Page 1 is clearly awake because you see him looking disturbed, while Ulti is crying, hugging onto her Pepe. So that was cute, but obviously the subtle hint is there. We're going to get some type of resolution, otherwise Oda would not be showing this right now. He would have showed Ulti in page 1 already left. He hasn't done that, so I'm glad he's like focusing on this. Now, this is either going to lead to Ulti in page 1 and Yamato saying, go off on your own, set out on the world yourself, or Ulti in page 1 are going to be so indebted to Yamato, the child of Kaido, much like how Hanafuda, the father, was enamored by Kaido and his strength. And they end up helping out Yamato on Yamato's journey. Maybe. But again, there's a reason why I already decided to choose Ulti in page 1 for this cover page involving Yamato. So we'll wait and see. But I like Oda highlighted this. Speaking of the Straw Hats, we start off with the 2/3 of the monster trio along with Goldberg going after a Groggysaurus for some dinosaur meat. So I like the triple combo here. We got Goldberg with a shield, which looks to be a homie. I'll get to that in a second. He blocks the attack from a Groggysaurus. In comes Zoro and Sanji. I love the teamwork because Sanji comes in with power shut. Then Zoro comes in to deliver the final blow and cuts the Groggysaurus in half. There's a dinosaur meat. So I like the combo. But then we got a reference to, obviously, this thing being edible. All you have to do is soak it in booze and you got it really going. But Sanji's not interested in that. He's more interested about the shield. And Sanji asks, what's with that? What's with that shield? Is it that some type of devil fruit? And Goldberg like, no. When my old man clashed with Big Mom back in the day, it came to life. So the implication being Goldberg's father clashed with Big Mom. He lost, and then it looks like Big Mom ripped Goldberg's father's soul and then made it the shield into a homie. Zoro, I think, is the one that mentions, oh, it's just like Zeus. And then Goldberg responds, you know Zeus. A high-ranking homie, and I think it's Zoro that responds, oh yeah, he's now our navigator's lackey, or a slave in this case. Then it cuts to the rest of the new giant warrior pirates, with Gerd, with Haradin, and with Road, as they're talking with Loki, and they find out about the Holy Knights. Now, at first when I saw this, I'm like, wait, is Oda, like, have we already got the reveal of what Loki was going to explain to Haradin about, hey, you really don't think I'm the one that killed killed our father, do you? In cold blood. That's what I thought. Oh, when I saw this, I'm like, did Oda already reveal this off screen and we're just going to see it later on? But with the dialogue that Zoro gives later on, that may not be the case. They talk about the Holy Knights, government officials. Horadine is like completely throwing shade still because he's like, oh, it must be due to your rampaging overseas, making enemies along the way. So that's interesting. We found out Loki, and it's going to tie into something else much bigger later on in the chapter. We find out about Loki. But he says he rampaged overseas. So he was off Elbaph, if that's what I'm understanding, right? And Loki responds, don't be ridiculous. I'd have already been king of the world if I was able to go that far and cross paths with a guy like that. Obviously referring to Shamrock, trying to hype him up, even though he's no longer here anymore. So I don't know why, but unless something changes. But then meanwhile, Luffy casually, it went from sitting on Loki's horns to sitting literally on the tip of the boot of Loki, referencing, oh, world government knights, huh? So finally, Luffy hears about the Holy Knights. What this is going to lead to is obviously a team up. Are they going to be the ones to fight the Holy Knights? I don't know. Judging from the way this chapter ended, I'm not so sure. There's going to be some type of interaction involving Luffy and Gunko, for sure. Whether that's a fight or not, I don't know. Meanwhile, you've got Sanji, Zoro, and Goldberg returning with the meat supply. Pause. And here you got the back and forth between Zoro and Sanji. Zoro's taking credit for taking it down, even though it was a team effort, but Zoro's what initiated the final blow. Sanji completely dissing Zoro, saying, hey, you look like broccoli soaring through the air. And when Stanson joins up with Goldberg with the firewood, you clearly see it worked, because you see Sanji and Zoro yet again going back and forth. Just like their fandom, they can't help themselves. But I love this next sequence where Luffy just grabs a chunk of that Groggysaurus meat and just feeds it to Loki casually while that's piping hot. Meanwhile, you got Gerd in the background, like warning Luffy not to do this because she's going to reopen Loki's wounds, even though technically she seems to be fine with that later on. Keep in mind, this is like boiling hot meat, so you put that in your mouth when you're lying down. He's like choking, and Luffy's like, oh, just chow down, otherwise you won't heal. So this is actually kind of cool because this scene does two things. One, it's like building the connection with Luffy and Loki, and two, it's actually build it on the intrigue and the hype of Loki, considering what we saw in the flashback. Now, it wasn't the flashback I was expecting, but I'm not mad at it. But then, obviously, because he's lying down, it's hard to swallow, so he's like choking. Luffy just grabs by the way, that's a huge cup of soup, scalding hot soup, by the way, and Luffy's carrying that by the bottom. So if you've ever held a plate that's come out of a microwave, you know how hot that shit is. It sucks. Luffy's like just carrying it, feed it to Loki. Loki fearing for his life right now. It's like, oh, keep that thing away from me. He ends up burning the shit out of Loki. I found this funny. Looks like she's actually scolding Luffy, because Luffy's like, oh, but my bad, I didn't mean to. But Gerd ends up giving the stamp of approval, the wink and the thumbs up. It kind of reminded me of Boa Hancock for some reason. I don't know why. And then Sanji cuts in. He's like, "Oh, you too, Gerd." And Sanji's like, "What did he do to piss off the Giants as much?" Completely not reading the room right now of what Gerd actually thinking right now. There was, like I said, from where we left off with Horadine literally trying to go for Loki's head, to like Loki's responding, "You don't think I really had something to do with murdering our father in cold blood?" So he was going to reveal something, and obviously, I thought it cut, and Oda's going to show that later. But the way it looks with Zoro's comment here is that I bet his promise to Luffy was just a trick, just to fool him. So clearly, Zoro doesn't still trust him. So either what happened back in the day involving King Harold and Loki hasn't been revealed yet, or it's been revealed and Zoro's still having trust issues. It's one of the two. Then Loki quickly responds, "Oh, Shanks' whereabouts? I'm afraid I wasn't lying about that." And then Zoro's like, yeah, well, out with it then, if that's the case. Loki's like, not so fast. We had a deal. You freed me from these chains first, which was the deal. So, which is why Luffy is so haphazard about freeing Loki and acting ever since he met Loki. So now he says, I wasn't lying about his whereabouts. Listen, it's nothing. He's not on Elbaph, so if anything, it's gonna have something to do with either Laughdale or something to do with the world government. One of the two, unless Oda's making some huge reappearance of Shanks being on Elbaph, and I can see it, but especially with what we find out in the next scene, because Loki says, "You really want to see red hair that bad, huh?" I guess I can relate, because I had something similar happen to me back in the day with a pirate in my youth that I looked up to, a legendary pirate that I looked up to. Horrody looks on, doesn't say a word. Luffy says, "Oh, you know the feeling, huh?" So immediately we got a mutual understanding involving Loki and Luffy. That is not a coincidence, but we get a flashback. You regret that you were just a kid, because we see Loki talking to two pirates, both in silhouette, but we come to find out who one of them is with the dialogue. He's asking them to take him with them. One of these pirates declines, saying, "I didn't come all this way to take a brat like you with me." And then he gets challenged by Loki. Loki gets wrecked. And then one of the pirates being revealed to be Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, questioning another pirate in silhouette. "You really pulled a blade on the child?" And that's where he responds, "Shut it, Newgate." And that's where we get the reveal of one of the pirates. Gee, I wonder who the other could have been in silhouette that was with Newgate. Now, I'm sure a lot of people were hoping that Kaido would be in this scene, because they want to link Loki and Kaido together so much for some reason. But that's not what this scene was for. And honestly, I have some reservations and questions about this, but I'm going to save that for the end, because this adds a whole new layer on Loki's character and the situation on Elbaph. So Loki in the present mentions, "I was just born in the wrong era." That's all it is. And then he cuts to, speaking of eras, we cut to Dory and Bragi with the crew. But mainly this scene was to hype up Scarpa like nobody's business. Oda's back at it again with hyping up Scarpa. He jumps off the ship and he goes in with the axes, taking out all the creature nightmares from the kids of Elbaph that got brought to life through Saint Killingham's abilities. But these things are scrubs, and we come to find out why that is. Because this is just the way these creatures are imagined by the kids, not understanding the real versions of them. That's why they're weak. And we come to find out that later, because we see the Fenrir popped up like a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare to Sol and Chopper. Now, we didn't see Robin in that scene, but she technically was still there. Oda decided to conveniently not show her in the same panels. But we see Sol has already taken down that Fenrir. So these creatures get taken down, and we know why. But Scarpa gets serious, because he looks on and he notices there's three of them now, talking about the Holy Knights. So, and then he references the voices can't be suppressed. Strange. So it looks like he has, and I'm not surprised by this, but it looks like he has the ability to hear the voice of all things, because he's talking about the voices, because now you see the expression on his face, Elbaph is no longer safe. So this may lead into what we saw at the ending of this chapter. I'll get to that later also. But boy, oh boy, this was to hype up Scarpa, but this is also setting up the reunion involving Colin and Scarpa, like I thought. Speaking of Robin and Choppy, we cuts to a squad of firefighters in Elbaph, and they're trying to put out the fire with, by the way, they're giant hoses with a lot of water, but that water isn't doing shit, because they're not doing anything to put out the flames. It's like I said, it's like jumping on the Fenrir, trying to cheer them on. So it's already been taken down. They're heading straight for the flames with no end in sight. Then we got Gunko and Saint Summers, and we don't see Saint Killingham in this scene, but Saint Summers is like, "Oh look, Gunko, these kids are about to burn alive," salivating that these kids are literally about to burn. And then Gunko responds, "Yeah, the heat will make them scream for their parents as the flames burn them down to the bone," which is cold. And obviously, this is dialogue we've missed from Gunko, because every scene we've seen for the past 3 chapters have been somewhat different from what we would expect from Gunko when we first saw Gunko. This is Oda kind of reminding us, don't sleep on Gunko just because she said certain things that may link to the Straw Hats. Like, no, she's for serious, and she doesn't care about these kids. She's all about that business. Meanwhile, Jinbei is all about saving these kids because we see him in the water coming up to like, and this scene was like to hype up Jinbei. I said this, like Jinbei's gonna be the one to put out the flames because the firefighter squad ain't doing shit with the hoses. So the point where Soul sees one of the kids literally step into the flames, he's running, and then Jinbei, out like a boss, comes in with shoulder throw, much like he did on Wano, put that fire out, no problem. So he puts the firefighter squad to shame, and then Jinbei, like a boss, like jumps back on board, and then I love how Nami's the one that hyping him up, say, "Oh, that's our Jinbei." I kind of hope Brook does something to do because he's there cheering him on. So is Usopp. I love how Robin is hooking Chopper, and then Chopper's asking, "Hey, wasn't that?" And Robin's like, "Yeah, that was Jinbei's doing." So I love how Robin already knew. Jinbei was all on that. Oda decided to make an interesting choice because I was thinking that Robin was going to disappear to find the Holy Knights. That may still happen because because this isn't stopping the kids from marching on. It just means that they're not going to walk into flames anymore and burn to ashes. But Robin's going to have a role. But first off, we get to Nami. Now, I love how Colin is like hyping up Jinbei. Jinbei's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing." Then Colin's like, "Oh, the kids at my school kind of hate me." This is kind of a character moment for him because he's like, yeah, even though he's putting on a tough act in front of them, he realizes, yeah, even though they may hate me, they're still my friends. And Nami is like, "Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. We're going to save them all." We're going to find out how determined Nami is real quick because literally out of left field, Gunko appears on the bow of the ship and Colin's like freaking out. The ship's, it's like, just the Straw Hats won't recognize this because they're like, "What the fuck?" Gunko, and not only is Gunko on the bow of the ship, but Gunko is ready to attack. Like, she's like stanced up, ready to attack. She's covering up her left eye with her hand. I still want to know more about that, but maybe it has something to do with Emu, but that doesn't mean she's a child of Emu. So you got Gunko with the hand over the eye, looking badass with the dialogue. "Oh, so the children weren't, all the children weren't at school, huh? This is a lively one." So now Colin is a target because one, obviously, is the main child focused in Elbaph, and number two, this is going to lead to Scopper coming in, but more on that in a second. And that's how the chapter ends with Gunko. It would look like the Straw Hats were going to charge at the Holy Knights, but Gunko and Oda said, "Fuck that, the Holy Knights bringing the fight to the Straw Hats." So I like that because it makes things unpredictable now. Because we don't, listen, I said this over and over again, like, we don't really, it's not going to end with the Holy Knights, especially after what we saw in this chapter. No. So a couple of things are going to come from this. One, like I said, this is going to bring in Scarpa to save his child, as he should. Now, we don't really know which way the pendulum is going to swing here because if we don't know if the Holy Knights are waiting in the wings, Gunko should be more than enough to take care of this group. I don't know how Jinbei's going to fare or Brook, but this scene is made for Nami because she was the one that said, "We're going to save everybody," and then in comes Gunko. So this is either going to bring Scarpa in, and this is either going to lead to Gunko versus Scarpa or one of the other Holy Knights against Scarpa. And at this point, I can see Saint Summers be the one to take him on, which would make more sense. Or Gunko is literally going to kidnap Colin, and there's going to be a rescue mission to get him back. So there's one of the two scenarios because, again, as much as I would like to see Nami and Usopp do something hype, I don't see that. Jinbei maybe, but Gunko's nobody to fuck with, so I don't know how it's going to end up, but they weren't even seeing this coming, so maybe because Robin and Chopper noticed, maybe because Robin noticed Jinbei's attack, maybe she's going to have something to do with this, I hope. So, but this could also lead into a team up involving Robin and Soul, because now the flames are out, they just need to figure out where the Devil Fruit users are using these abilities from. So maybe they're going to be a team to want the other Holy Knights. Maybe Saint Killingham at this point. But there's only 3 right now, which begs the question, do you see Gunko taking on the combination of Luffy and Loki? I don't. So something's going to happen here to whether Colin gets rescued by his father, Scarpa, or Colin is going to get kidnapped and he's going to be the one to be captured, leaving into a rescue mission, and that's going to add into Nami's determination because of what she said. So we'll have to wait and see. And there's a reason why Oda decided to choose Gunko. So does she recognize the Straw Hats? Does she recognize Brook? Because we saw her listening to New World in the previous chapter. That was a clear-cut reference. So does she know Soul King Brook is among them? Obviously, they're in disguise, so I don't know. A lot of questions are going to be answered about Gunko with this, because now a lot of people seem to want to link Gunko to Nami still for whatever reason. Well, we're going to find out real quick. It's the final saga, and nothing's off limits or nothing's off the table when it comes to Oda. Speaking of nothing being off limits, so that leads me into my final point, and the scene we saw involving Loki and the two pirates, obviously one of them being Newgate, so let's not beat around the bush. We know who that other pirate is in silhouette, Rox D. Zebek. So one of my questions is, was that on Elbaph where Loki met them? If so, that changes the game, because alert signals, this is bringing in Teach, for sure, to Elbaph, if that's the case. Rox D. Zebek, and having Loki say, that was my idol, my inspiration, the same way Shanks was the inspiration to Luffy. If that isn't screaming a confrontation, now, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this means Oda's could have a change of plans, and having Shanks reappear on Elbaph magically, but I guess stranger things have happened, so we'll wait and see. But I said this in my last review, Oda, with the visuals already that we've seen, teasing Cross Guild and the Revolutionary Army, that's circling around social media, that can't be ignored, and I don't think Oda's going to do something to take away from Elbaph, considering how long he's waited to get us to Elbaph, and more importantly to get to Elbaph himself, because he's been building on this story. So I don't see him doing actively anything to take away from this, because of the way. In one hand, I can see it because of the time restraints, but at the same time, this is not like Egghead Island. I said this previously. This is different than Egghead Island. We didn't know what we were going to get. With Wano, Oda was really smart because he condensed it into 3 acts, because he played off the Japanese culture, and he sprinkled doses of world building after each act. So, but he can't do the same thing with Elbaph, because it's an art that Oda's been building longer than Wano, but he can't do it. He can't divide it into 3 acts. So he could do this, but I don't see why Oda would do this, because it's literally taken away from Elbaph. So you're not going to have a reveal about the Revolutionary Army while there's a giant arc going on about Elbaph, which has been built up longer. So I don't see that. Plus you have Cross Guild involved. That has to be linked to Elbaph, because if there's a raw poneglyph, then that's going to bring in Cross Guild, wouldn't you think? And that's also going to probably lead to Teach, but he's going to go after Shirahoshi first. But with this chapter, if Loki challenged Rox D. Zebek, and that was Elbaph, because remember, Haradine in the chapter did say Loki did travel overseas to cause trouble. So we don't really know. I'm just going to throw it out there, but I don't know why, because we know there's a connection between Rox D. Zebek and Teach. I don't know if Loki's going to get over this as far as his hatred of Shanks and now Shamrock. I can see either 2 things: Teach showing up, either killing Loki, stealing his devil fruit, because remember, that's a legendary devil fruit, and a lot of people seem to think he's going to get a 3rd devil fruit. So that's a possibility. Or he could actually link up with Teach and say, hey, he can make a massive reveal about his connection with Rox D. Zebek, and that's where Loki joins him. You're not going to add a scene involving Rox D. Zebek and Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, showing up in front of Loki. Loki called him a inspiration to him, but he was born in the wrong era, and not have something connected to Teach as well. You're not going to do that. So it's either Teach comes to Elbaph, causes havoc, and maybe he's the one that steals the devil fruit of Loki and kill him, or something else happens and he ends up joining Teach's crew. But we'll have to wait and see. I know a lot of people want Loki to join the Straw Hats, but the thing is, that's a temporary alliance. That's not going to last long. I can see both ways, but right now there's a stronger possibility now than ever before that Teach is showing up to do some crazy shit. So this is why I said this is not just going to end with the 3 Holy Knights. They may be broken as all hell, but this is not where it ends. Unless more Holy Knights show up. But that's, again, we don't know what else is going to happen. I still think the world government's going to have more influence on this. Kidnapping Colin is going to be a major catalyst for the war on Elbaph, which is ironic because the current generation want nothing to do with war. But I see that happening, because at the end of the day, he's still a part of Elbaph. So that's going to bring Elbaph together by the end. So the way you do that is cause a conflict, and one of their own gets captured, leading into some major payback on their way. As far as Gunka is concerned, we're going to find out what she can do against the Straw Hats. At this point, I hope Usopp does something epic, but at this point, I'm leaning more towards Nami. But I don't like her chances, unless something out of the box happens involving Gunko. We're gonna have to wait 2 weeks to find out. But right now, my hype is like, oh boy. So if it wasn't enough that there's a possibility of the Revolutionary Army and the Cross Guild may potentially show up on Elbaph, now you add in the factor of possibly Teach showing up and having some major interaction, because now this is a game changer. Because it's one thing to have Loki pissed at Shanks, it's another thing to have Loki mention that Rocksteady Zebek is a major influence on Loki's life. For better or worse, this is going to lead into something epic. So I can't wait to see what that is. But yeah, you cannot deny now there's a possibility of not only Cross Guild and the Revolutionary Army making a move, showing up on Elbaph, but now Teach as well. So let me know what you guys think down below. Like I said, I love this chapter a lot. Either with a break next week, we've got the anime to look forward to. So let me know what you guys think down below. That's going to do it for you guys. Thanks so much for watching. You guys know what to do. If you enjoyed the review, hit that thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys' support when it comes to these One Piece videos. Catch you guys later. Thanks, guys. Bye.